Happy Tuesday. It is Tuesday, March 14th, the 73rd day of the year. There are 292 days left in 2023. And welcome to another edition of Tuesdays with Thom. It is 46 degrees down here on the coast. And every time we put our sweaters up, it looks like we have to pull them back out. But we don't take our flip-flops off. We're still flip-flopping around here. Hopefully it'll warm up at some point. So, can you get a second chance? A do-over. Today we will attempt to do so. No matter how forward, how sophisticated our world becomes with all the electronics, drop boxes, passwords, internet, etc., there's always the possibility that on any given day you hit your password and things just go wacko, or they just don't work that day. That happened to us a couple of weeks ago with our G-list guest, Sylvester Croom. It turned out to be one of those days when things just wouldn't go right. When you're in the middle of doing a live show and things go haywire, it can be nerve-wracking, but you have to keep your cool anyway. Today, we're going to give it another shot. Our G-list guest today is Sylvester Croom, star football player at the University of Alabama, first black coach in the SEC. He's coached in the NFL for many years, and he's just a good guy. I look forward to meeting with Sylvester today. Now, this edition of Tuesdays with Thom, of course, is sponsored by our partners, the Best Girl Consulting Firm. Best Girl has been providing customized solutions to executive issues for 34 years. Let's hear from Best Girl.
Best Girl is a consulting firm that provides customized leadership, access and inclusion, public relations, communications, and organizational consulting services. Clients include Fortune 500 companies, utilities, higher education institutions, small businesses, and associations. Best Girl's team of consultants, led by Joyce Gilly-Gossam, Emily Hedrick, and Sean Jones, partners with business and education clients to promote organizational effectiveness, communication, motivation, and leadership, with always an impact on the bottom line. Best Girl's customized consulting services include strategic planning, corporate communication, executive coaching, fundraising, and economic development.
It's the solution that fits your needs. So, let's get to our roundtable regulars, and we got a change today. Michael Walker's not going to be with us, so I want to introduce Barbara Wallace Edwards and a special roundtable guest, Barbara Larkin, and Rick Davis is here as well. So let's see, let's get to them and see what we got here. Good morning, Barbara Wallace Edwards. How are you?
Good morning, Thom. I'm doing well, thank you. How are you on this chilly morning? It's 31 degrees here in Birmingham.
Wow, man. Yeah. I still got my flip-flops on.
I don't think I could wear my flip-flops out this morning.
We'll see. So how was your weekend, Barbara?
Thom, it was pretty good, pretty basic though. You know, I had some water damage problems here at the house, so I was taking care of that most of the weekend. So it was kind of quiet, but
water damage.
All in all, water damage. Yes, yeah. I had a water hose on the washing machine to come disjointed or something, so it caused a little bit of problems for me. But otherwise, it was a great weekend.
So I understand there's some big games going on.
Yes,
in Birmingham this weekend.
Yes, the NCAA regional tournament is going to be held here, and so we've got a lot of people coming to Birmingham this coming week. Both Alabama and Auburn, and another number one seed, Houston, is coming to town. We got UAB playing in the NIT tournament, and they're playing here this weekend. Actually tonight, I think. So it's going to be a lot of people. They're expecting anywhere between $10 and $15 million impact on the city of Birmingham this week, and so that's going to be huge.
That's great.
Yes,
that's wonderful. I remember a few years ago. It's been more than a few years, but when they had some tournaments in Birmingham, Michael Jordan played there.
I remember.
Ralph Sampson played there.
Yes, I was there.
It was great.
And, really, really good. So we're glad that all of that's coming back to Birmingham. So it should be pretty exciting around here.
Okay, well let's say first of all I want to move on, but let me say happy birthday to Antley.
Yes.
Antley, happy birthday.
Happy belated birthday, Aunt Lee. And
Yeah, I
we
think
also have to congratulate the women's team for South Carolina, won the SEC tournament and regular season as well. And also the University of Alabama men's team won the men's SEC tournament, basketball tournament, and the regular season. So congratulations to both of those universities.
okay. Well, let's get Barbara Larkin on here and see how she's doing. Good morning, Barbara.
Good morning. How
We
are
got
you, Tom? How are you, Barbara?
Doing well, sis. How are
got the
you?
two Barbaras
Good.
here.
Good to
You
see you
know,
both.
I knew your parents. I met them in Auburn
Yes.
long time back.
Long time back.
So I was close with my mom, but I was real close with my dad.
Me too.
And so I was going to ask you if are girls, I can say girls, so are girls that close to their mothers or their fathers?
Well, I was close to both. My mom
Okay.
was elementary school teacher, and she never stopped teaching. And
You
her
mean at home too, huh?
oh, absolutely. I mean,
Even after she retired, she was still
yes.
teaching.
But even though she was an elementary school teacher, her first love was African American history, and let me tell you, in cleaning out that storage unit, I have a bundle of African American history. And in fact, I found two large articles on our special guest today. Amongst all of her things, she collected everything that she thought was worthy. Yeah. So, yeah, she's a teacher all of her life. And I was close to her, but my shoulder always rubbed up against dad.
I understand. I do. So, how was your weekend, Barbara? Pitts, Larkin?
Oh, it was great. We spent time really sitting at the television watching the games. In fact, Barbara came over and watched with us
Yes.
for a while, and
Yes.
Tom, my husband, cooked dinner for us. So we were, hey, and he cleaned
Yeah,
the kitchen
we
too.
were
So
we were treated
happy.
like queens on Sunday evening. It
Barbara,
was marvelous.
Barbara,
dinner.
I have to specify which Barbara I'm talking
Yes.
about. So Barbara Wallace Edwards came over and put the guilt trip on y'all about all that water leaking in her house, and y'all cooked dinner for her.
Well,
I didn't
we
even
did.
have to do that, Tom. They do it all the time. They're so wonderful. They're such wonderful hosts.
Well,
I really appreciate them. That's my brother and sister. So they're married, but they're my brother and sister. I claim both of them. So
we are, and see, we keep the names Tom and Barbara connected.
I
yes.
see. I see. Well,
We
we've
do.
got Barbara Larkin. You got anything else you want to tell us right now about your
I just
weekend
want
or
to.
your life?
Well, we lost a great U.S. senator this morning, Pat Schroeder, out in, I believe it was in Colorado.
Colorado, I
We
remember
lost
her.
her this morning. And instead of going through all of the history that she provided for us, I just want to say to just know the kind of personality and hard worker she was and feminist she was. You should read her book. It's entitled, and she served in the U.S. House of Representatives. Her book biography entitled 24 Years of Housework, and the Place is Still a Mess. My Life in Politics. So that just kind of tells
Oh
you
wow.
that
Yeah.
from 72
great.
to, I think she served until 97, she was really bumping heads with guys about women have a right to be in the House and the Senate. Yeah. So read that
Yeah.
biography.
Remember her. Yeah, I'd like to read that. Let's see if we can get Rick Davis on here. We got Michael couldn't be here today, so we substituted and all around. So is Rick Davis, you out there?
I am here, yes, sir.
Good
How you doing,
morning.
Tom? Good morning.
I'm doing great. How you doing?
I'm great. Thank you very much. Colder in Birmingham than it is down on the beach, isn't it?
Yes, it is, Rick.
Yeah.
We're
So
all
you
feeling it here.
You got the two Barbaras here.
There you go.
Rick.
Hey, Barbara. How are
Good
y'all?
morning. Doing good.
Good
Great,
morning.
Rick.
Great. Thank you.
So Rick, how's your world?
It's good. It's good. Just staying busy. My wife, she's from Orlando. She grew up, and when she was in college, she worked at Disney. And so she does these dance competitions all over the country she's a
wow.
judge, and so she was in Battle Creek, Michigan this past weekend, and it's a company called Showstoppers, and so she travels in the spring and early summer just about every weekend. So I'm all by myself on the weekend, so I just come to work. I come to work on Saturday, go to church on Sunday, and then that's my weekend, and then watch TV. Would like to play golf, but it's too cold right now. So.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. I remember when the weekend was a big deal, and I think my wife went out of town a couple of weeks or so ago, and it was like, oh man, she's gone. I may go out or whatever. Never left the house, you know.
Yep. That's me. I'm that same way. Yeah.
So let's Barbara Wallace, you got anything else for us?
Well, Tom, in honor of Women's History Month, I wanted to honor a lady that doesn't get much. We don't hear much about her. Margaret Murray Washington was born in Macon, Mississippi, one of 10 children born to sharecroppers. She spent much of her time reading and quickly excelled in school and enrolled in Fisk University. She became the principal of Tuskegee Normal, an industrial institute which later became Tuskegee University, and was married to Booker T. Washington in 1893. She also created the Tuskegee Women's Club and merged local organizations with Women's Club to help improve the values and liberation of womanhood in African American women of the Jim Crow South.
That's pretty incredible.
So just wanted to, share that tidbit. If I didn't know much about his wife, we always hear about Booker T. Washington, but not much about his wife.
Very true. That's the first time I've ever heard of his wife.
Yes.
Yeah. She was a very beautiful woman too, and very smart.
Yes.
Very intelligent.
That's good to know. Yeah, I'll look that up. And we've put Miss Schroeder's book up in the chat.
Yes.
It's in our chat right now. 24 years of housework and the place is still a mess. It's a great title.
It is.
It's a great title. So, hey, Rick, here's what you and I were talking earlier, and you know how great it was, how much fun it was to play football. But it's been 50 years since we played.
Yeah.
I don't ever talk about it like that because it's like, damn, you must be old.
Yeah.
Well, I am.
Oh, it was me too. Yeah, we're on the same time pattern here. You know, it does seem hard to believe. I mean, it's 50 years ago, and I look back at pictures and I just, you stop and you think, man, that was a long time ago. You know, I can't do that anymore. I couldn't even try to do some of the stuff. So,
but do you guys remember when we used to think that someone at 50 was old?
Oh yeah.
I mean, we thought they were like, real old, and now, you know, we're all beyond that age, and it's like, oh no, that's not really so bad.
Yeah. I'll be 70 in May. What are you, Tom? How old are you?
71.
Okay, so and Sly's the youngest of us all, I think. He's a young guy.
He is. Yeah. I am the senior of the group. Oh yeah.
Boy, I remember my mom would not allow us to tell anybody how old she was. She told me at one time, stop telling people how old you are. They don't know how old I am. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I have a funny story to tell you all about that. After my mom passed away, maybe a couple of years, maybe 4 years or so, my dad started dating again. So he was dating this lady, and I didn't know how old she was. I mean, she appeared to be around his age, and so I'd gone down for the weekend. Of course, he was in Mobile, and I'd gone down for the weekend, and I was going to meet her. And he said, "Now, don't tell her how old you are." It's like, well, why not? And he said, just don't. Well, she asked me, you know, how old I was, and I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, well, I the lady asked me a question, so I answered her. So he pulled me to the side. He said, I told you not to tell her. I said, well, why? Well, she was my age, and he had told her that he was the same age as she was. That's not possible. I'm sorry. You know, you're just gonna tell her the truth.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's interesting.
Yes, yes.
Hmm.
My dad had trouble when my mom passed. He couldn't really bring himself to date, I guess is
Hmm.
the
Right,
word.
Yeah.
right.
It was
Yeah.
tough on him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was tough on my dad too for a long time, but I was really happy to see him start dating again, which it
Mhm.
didn't
Yeah,
last long, but because he was looking for another person like my mom, and I don't think they
yeah,
exist
Couldn't
any
find
longer.
her.
No.
Yeah.
Right. So,
yeah,
Yeah.
but it gave him something else to focus on because he was just so sad and grieving. I thought we were going to lose him too, right
Mm.
after
Hmm.
my mom passed away. So I thought it was very good for him to start dating again.
Yeah.
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 That's interesting.
Yeah.
You guys got anything else you want to hit on before we move on? Nope.
I
Okay.
don't think so.
Well, let's introduce Sean. Sean's got a minute for us. So, Sean, you got a minute there.
Good morning. My name is Shantia Jones, and this is Got a Minute. Hey, quick question. Is it dark on your side of town when it's supposed to be light? Yes? Well, it's dark on my side of town too. At first, I thought I was losing my mind. So I checked Google to see what time it was. Then, lo and behold, I came to realize it was daylight saving time. According to the American Association of Retired Persons, or AARP, many states want to stop changing the clock. In the last few years, 19 states have either enacted legislation or passed resolutions to stick to daylight saving time year-round, but implementing this change would require an update to federal law. Under the Uniform Time Act, states can either observe daylight saving time as currently practiced or stay on the standard time year-round, meaning there's no easy shortcut for those hoping for a permanent shift forward. As for me, I'm feeling extremely tired until I'm able to adjust to the change. So, in the meantime and in between time, thank you all for joining in. My name is Shantia Jones, and this is Got a Minute.
Sean. Sean, as soon as you can you come back on here? I got a question for you. Sean was telling us a story about her son and his reaction to daylight savings time.
Oh.
And I thought it'd be a good story for us, but I see
Yes.
she's not in a hurry to come back. So
There she
there
comes.
she is.
There she is.
So tell us about your son and daylight savings time.
Okay, well, so he says to me, I wake him up Monday morning, and he's like, Mommy, it's still nighttime. And I'm like, no, it's the morning. He's like, no, it's the nighttime, and I go to school at daytime. Where's the sun? So I'm just like, okay, how do I explain daylight saving to a 7-year-old? And he just looked at me like, okay.
I don't blame Kai. I felt the same way when I woke up yesterday morning.
I'm still recovering.
Yes.
And he came home yesterday and he's like, Mom, I'm so tired. He took a nap, woke up, played, and went right back to bed.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
then got up this morning and said he was still tired.
Kai and I are on the same schedule. I
know.
Yeah.
have to agree with Kai.
I
Oh
know.
no, it doesn't bother me as much. I guess I've got used to it over the years.
I guess so. Yeah.
Okay, well let's move on. Let's go to Hollywood's got the A list, and here on Tuesdays with Thom, we have the G list. Now, our G list guest today is Sylvester Croom. Sylvester's been around football pretty much most of his life. He was a pioneer black athlete at the University of Alabama. He was a starting center and won a national championship in 1973. University of Alabama annually hands out the Sylvester Croom Commitment to Excellence Award. He has been an outstanding coach in the NFL, coaching top flight running backs such as Maurice Jones, Drew, Derrick Henry, Eric Dickerson, Barry Sanders. He was on the staff of the San Diego Chargers, who went to the Super Bowl. And he's on the Alabama staff that went to 10 bowl games in 11 seasons, played on 3 straight SEC championship teams at Alabama. And I guess I could go on and on and on, but I'm going to go ahead and stop. Good morning, Coach Croom. How are you?
I'm doing great. How you guys doing?
We're doing well. We're doing well.
Oh, you can hear me. Oh, thank God.
Well, you know, I was going to say, man, you got real serious when you said that. I guess you were
Holding your breath.
I was over here
let me
holding
tell
my
you
breath
something.
for him.
Hey, I've been sitting here just waiting, just nervously, just anticipating that introduction. Oh, I feel so relieved now. Hey, I went out and bought new headsets and a new iPad, the whole deal.
Well, we appreciate it. We're glad you're here, you know. So welcome. And
Thank you.
let me ask you a couple of things, but you know, I just want to say this. I think Rick and I have kind of had this conversation before, but you guys played at Alabama, I played at Auburn, and the people, somebody needs to tell those people down the street from me that it's over now, that we don't play anymore, because they're still all fired up. They see me, they roll tide. Okay. You know? But anyway, so Coach, tell me what's going on in your world.
Well, Tom, it's hey, I'm enjoying life, and again, it's like I heard you guys talking about. It's been 50 years already. It doesn't seem like it. The only time when I go to the doctor is about the only time it seems like it's 50 years. When all that football and those joints start to hurt and you got to repair them now. That's the only part of it. Mentally, I feel great. But the knees, the shoulders, the hands, all that stuff, it's time to pay the piper. When you play football, sooner or later, you got to pay up.
And you know what's interesting is you wake up some mornings and you got a new ailment and you don't know what happened between the time you went to bed and the time you woke up. It's like, what happened? But my shoulder's killing me, man.
Tom, I don't know. I tell you what, this is the truth. I literally have to stretch when I get out of bed now.
Yes.
Yes. I hear you.
Yes.
So I think some of the ladies might have a question for you, Coach.
Okay.
Which barber is up first?
I'll start. Good morning, Coach. Welcome back.
Good morning, Barbara.
Well, you know, I
Good to
know
hear you.
Thank you. Good to hear you as well. I know you grew up in Tuscaloosa and, you know, were surrounded by the University of Alabama and football. Did you always want to attend the University of Alabama? And if so, when did you decide you wanted to play football there?
Well, I never thought about going to Alabama until my senior year in high school, which was the fall of 1970-71. I grew up probably 5 to 10 miles from the campus in the Hope community. We lived out in the county, so they call us country boys out there.
Right.
And because of segregation at that time, the thought of playing at Alabama never even crossed my mind.
Wow.
My dad had played was an All-American at Alabama A&M, so that was where I was planning to go in. And my teammate in high school was John Stallworth, and John was already at A&M. In fact, I went up to visit the campus up there, and that's where I intended to go. And my senior years, Danny Ford, who was the head coach that won the national championship at Clemson, was a graduate assistant at Alabama and was doing his student teaching at Tuscaloosa High School, where I attended school. And that's when a relationship started. He was the one that recommended me to Coach Brian, and that's how I got a scholarship offer.
Wow.
That was a late offer, and they weren't breaking down my. Even though I was an all-state player, nobody was breaking down my doors at the time to sign me. So, and I think I was only the second player from Tuscaloosa to ever even get a scholarship to Alabama. So it
Wow,
was a
that's
big deal, and I
yes.
was really surprised.
Wow, and the rest is history. That's great.
The rest is history. The rest is
Yes,
history.
yes,
Life-changing decision.
absolutely.
Isn't it amazing how one decision can totally change your life,
Yes,
for the
yes,
rest of
Yeah, I
your
tell
life?
you what, Tom, you're right about that. I think about the decisions in life and the people who come into your life that God blesses you with people, and you never know who it is, when it is, and that's been the most amazing thing to me when I look back over my life. I often think about, what if I had not met that person? What if I had made that
yes,
decision? How
right.
different things would have been.
What if I had made the decision I wanted to make, but circumstances wouldn't allow me to make it? you
That's
know?
exactly right. That's
That's what
exactly
I
right.
call divine intervention,
There
Tom.
you go.
Yeah, I guess
Absolutely.
so.
Absolutely.
That's
Oh
exactly
yes.
right.
That's interesting. I'd never heard that before, Coach. That you wanted to go to A&M.
Mhm.
I think a lot of us wanted to go somewhere different, but just mainly because of the circumstances. You didn't allow yourself
Right.
uh, to think differently,
Mhm.
to think that you could
Yes.
be somewhere else, doing something else. It was an interesting period of time. It really, really was. And so you and Rick got to be pretty close at some point.
Yeah. Yeah, we did. We played against each other in high school, and I told people it's the first time I met Rick was we're going out for I think it was at Bessemer High School,
Right.
and
Yeah.
I was at
Just
Tuscaloosa High
Lanier.
School,
Yeah.
and
Just Lanier.
just Lanier. That's right,
Yeah.
just Lanier. And he was in the game that we played each other. I was the captain, and he was the captain too. And we go out for the coin toss, and you get ready to, you know how you go out the coin toss, and you do the stare down. You're going
Yes.
you're gonna try to intimidate the other guy. You look
Uh-huh.
at it, and I was always, I would have my game face on. I'd be ready, man. I mean, I was ready to go. This guy comes out there with this big smile on his face, and and I'm looking at him. I'd never seen this before. He caught me off guard. He come out there just smiling, just smiling, his big old grin on his face, and I'm sitting there thinking, this guy's nuts. And I knew right then he was different, and
Yes.
that's the way he's always been. He just smiled all the time, and then. But then when the ball snapped, he tried to cut you in half and just smile the whole time.
Rick, what's your impression of that first meeting?
We had a pretty good team, and I think Sly and them, they were struggling a little bit that year. We ended up tying each other. I think it was a tie game, 14-14, something like that. But Sylvester and I, it's one of these things where he roomed right across the hall from me our freshman year with Steve Ford, who played at Tuscaloosa High School too. And I think Steve was a walk-on, kind of a
Yeah.
he wasn't on scholarship, but yeah. So our freshman year was Wilbur Jackson was the first black scholarship football player 1 year ahead of us, and then in our class was Sylvester and Ralph Stokes and Mike Washington, and it was one of those things where just Coach Bryant just handled things so well, and we both of y'all were at that panel discussion that we had at the 16th Street Baptist Church several years ago, and it was just Coach Bryant just was such a in total control, it seemed, of everything, that he didn't allow anything to happen, or if something did happen, he already had a plan on what he was going to do. And so that was the thing that with the integration of the football program, it was that same way. And that's one of the things that I know just and Sly, I would just one of the things Sly I've always kind of were there things that came up? How did your mom and dad react to when Alabama was recruiting you? It's one of the things I've never asked you that, I don't think, but it was like, were they in favor of you going to Alabama? I know your dad couldn't go to Alabama because they weren't signing black players back then. But was there any concern on your parents' behalf of you going to Alabama?
Yeah, there was. Of course, the question was how, the big question, of course, was how was Coach Bryant going to handle things, and how that was always the big question. Was I going to be given an opportunity? And and a lot of my going to Alabama, and the reason I went to Tuscaloosa High School, see, I had an aunt, I had uncles who were very involved in the civil rights movement, and they marched and risked their lives. So I was too young at that time. They wouldn't let me get, at the time, just the overlap. I think during I was 9 years old in '63. So in that 63 to 68 era in there, I was too young to be involved in the marches, but the teenagers in my family were highly involved. So when it came time to integrate schools in Tuscaloosa, my going to integrated schools was a response to what they had already done. To their involvement. It was almost if it was my duty to go.
Right.
And to be in those first groups when I went to Tuscaloosa Junior High School in '68. And then the same thing when Wilbur went to Alabama, it was almost as okay, the rest of the family, the rest of the community has made these sacrifices. You're the one that's got to go step through the door and create opportunities for other people. And that's the way I was raised. And so when I went to Alabama, it was, and then again, back to when I was in junior high school, hey, you got to go out there, you got to do your best. And especially academically, as well as football. And again, to say when our relationships at Alabama, one of the main reasons there wasn't any problem between black and white players, because we had, when you confronted with Coach Bryant, we needed each other just to survive. And so adversity will bring about unity.
Yes. Yes.
That's it. I agree with you that being involved in sports at that time, being involved at Alabama, Auburn, the SEC schools, was a part of the civil rights thing. I mean, I saw it that way.
Yes.
I saw that I was doing something that was going to help some other people. And James Owens, who was an African American, James always said that when he came out of that tunnel the first time, and Auburn unfortunately had a section of bleachers where all the black people who worked on campus in B&G, buildings and grounds, where they sat. And James said when he came out that tunnel, he said it was like their collective weight was all on his shoulders. And they were, he was their football player. He wasn't a football player. He was there.
That's right.
And that's an interesting. It's a, you carry that weight, but it was a part of civil rights. I mean, it was what we were destined to do. And, so anyway,
hey Tom, can you imagine now if we were just going to school to play football and get some NIL money?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I can't.
Can you imagine what that would have felt like? I mean, none of that ever crossed your mind.
No.
I mean, just the scholarship part of it. It was all of. I mean, really, it as you said, it wasn't just about what was going to happen, because we weren't thinking about playing pro football.
Right.
Right.
You're
You
right.
know, I
You're
mean,
right.
it was you were going to school to get an education and open the door
For
for the
someone else.
next guy, the next
Right.
generation. I
Right.
mean,
That's right.
what you were going to get out of it other than education at that time, it didn't even cross your mind because I know for me, you know, later on I thought, well, maybe I'll play. And even if I had played pro football very long, it wasn't going to be a career. You know,
Right.
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 it was so different at that time. It wasn't
That's right.
about, you know, the only reason I wanted to play pro football was to get enough money to get me through graduate school and get my doctor's degree. That was
That's
the
right.
only reason I wanted to play.
Right.
Because they didn't pay you
And
that much back then. The
that's right.
No,
NFL,
they
They didn't
didn't.
pay you
They
that
didn't.
you
much,
didn't make
and
any money. Yeah.
Right. He
no,
didn't.
no, you didn't make any money,
I,
and it's so different now.
Yes.
I went up to the Bills, and O.J. Simpson was making $62,000
Oh
a
yeah.
week.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
A week.
Wow. Oh
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. My
And I
fourth year in
think
the
that,
NFL, I made $35,000. My fourth year in the league.
Wow.
yeah,
yeah.
It's a
yeah.
lot different. Yeah.
And you know, and the other thing I think about the young men today and the young ladies is with the NIL, there's more of an incentive to play for yourself. We played for the school.
Right.
You know,
Yes.
it was about the school, and it was about making, you know, all these guys who played before you know, because back then you listened to the games on the radio, and it was a big deal, you know. So it has changed a heck of a lot, and I just hope these young men and ladies take advantage of the opportunity because
True.
it's a heck of an
Yep.
opportunity.
It is.
One of you barbers got a question for Rick or Sylvester?
Barbara
I
Lark.
do. I want to say to Rick that Jess Lanier was right around the corner from where I was born in Bessemer.
Oh,
I
yeah.
lived at 329th Street in Bessemer.
Okay.
And yeah, so I wouldn't have known you at that time because I was born a lot earlier than you, but nevertheless,
Uh-huh.
that's that connection. And with Coach Croom, your father and my father probably knew each other very well in Tuscaloosa. My father was the pastor of First African Baptist Church from 73 to 1990.
Wow.
And so it's
Wow.
very likely that our parents were
Very likely. Very likely.
yeah. And I worked at the University of Alabama for a portion of the time that you were there, and we were all very, very proud of you. I worked at in a Rose Administration building. I was working
Really?
at the advancement office, and I had the chance to meet Coach Bryant in the elevator one time. And all I remember is that he was very tall, and I couldn't understand a single thing he said.
Yeah.
Nothing.
You
Neither
weren't
could
alone.
we.
Yeah, you weren't alone.
So I do have I have a couple of questions for you, but this one in particular is, what was it like to be coached by Coach Bryant? And what were some of the things that he emphasized during his coaching years with you that stay with you even today, going through all of the twists and turns and changes of your life, which leads you to today? What do you remember most about his coaching you as a player?
Well, first of all, it was very tough. I mean, Coach Bryant was very tough and demanding and uncompromising. He had a plan for how he thought it was going to make the team a winner and also going to make you a successful man in whatever endeavor that you would go into. He was coaching football, but he was also getting us ready to be men in life. And when I left high school, as Rick stated earlier, I played on bad football teams in high school. We weren't any good, and when you play on losing teams, it can affect you mentally.
Mhm.
You start to doubt yourself. You're not sure about things. And I'll be very honest with you. The reason when I went to Alabama, I went out there as a all-state player. But I'll be honest with you, I didn't even think when I first got on that campus, I just wanted to be on the team. And
Yeah.
I wanted to be on the team for one reason. I wanted to see if I was good enough to play for Coach Bryant, because You knew he was such a national celebrity. He was, and I knew how tough it was going to be. And I had great respect for my father, for my family, and a lot of the things that Coach Bryant talked about. I mean, that was the way I was raised.
Right.
Having pride in yourself and having self-discipline and doing the little things right, being the best you could be. And those were the things that Coach Bryant demanded. He would always say the first thing every year, he would always say when he stood up in front of the team, in order to win at anything, the first thing you got to do is keep from losing. Don't beat yourself with dumb penalties, mistakes, and turnovers. And I translate that in life. It's simply this. It's the same way my mom and dad would always tell us. Yeah, you growing up here, things are against you. You're growing up in a society that's not giving you an opportunity, but that ain't no excuse. Do the best with what you got. Make sure you take care of your business. Do all you can, and you put the rest in God's hand. And that's the way I took it from Coach Bryant.
Yes.
Use your ability to the maximum. And as I look back on it, I think I did that because I have coached a whole lot better players than myself. But the thing I've found with a lot of times with talented people, the greater the talent, the less the motivation, the less
Right.
the dedication, because it comes easy. It did
Right.
not come easy for me. It didn't come easy for Rick. It didn't come easy for a lot of the guys that I played with. We had to fight for every inch, for everything we got. And that has carried over into our lives, I think, in all of us. I know especially in me. I think about Coach Bryant and my dad every single day. And the lessons that I learned about discipline, work, preparation. And the main one is how to handle adversity, how to handle things when they go bad. I remember this, Coach Bryant used to always say, he said, what are you going to do 20, 30 years from now when you're married and your kid gets sick or passes away? Then your wife leaves you, runs off with a drummer or whatever that was. I didn't even know what a drummer was. He said, how you going to handle that then?
Yeah.
If you can't handle this, you're not going to be able to handle that down the road.
Right.
And he's right.
Wow.
There's been time, I'm sure, in all of your lives, and I know in mine, things happen in your personal life. Things have happened after you've done everything that you think you can to do your best. Life just happens.
Right.
It does.
Dealing with death, the loss of parents, the loss of friends, and what are you gonna do? How are you gonna react? You gonna throw in the towel? You gonna everything you believe in, does it go out the window, or do you keep going?
Right.
And that's what we learned from him.
Yeah.
So
And believe
can I?
me, we learned it the hard way.
Oh yeah, Sly. One of the things, remember, Coach Bryant would say, in practices were hard. I mean, they were really, really hard. And Coach Bryant said, "Hey,
Yes.
if you're going to quit on me, I want you to quit on me in practice. I don't want you
Not
to
in
quit
the
on me
game.
in the fourth
Yes.
quarter when the
Right.
game's on the
Yes.
line." And
Right.
so that's
Yes.
the way he handled things. I mean, he
Right.
was so demanding that it was just you either stayed on the team or you quit and you left. If you weren't willing to do things like Coach Bryant wanted them done.
But think about it, there was no transfer portal. Just in our freshman class, there were 35 of us as freshmen.
Right.
There was 35 of us as freshmen, on 13 of us graduated.
Wow.
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 That's great. That's great.
That
I
is
mean,
great.
considering, yeah. One other question I want to ask about Coach Croom is your dad was chaplain for the football team. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am. I think Coach Curry made him an official chaplain. He was sort of
Right.
unofficial when we were there, because in those days they didn't have quote team chaplains. But
Right.
Coach Bryant and Dad had developed a relationship over the years, which I was not even aware of a lot of until
was
after Coach
wondering.
Bryant passed away.
Yeah.
They confided in Coach Bryant confided in Dad, and Dad had helped them later on in recruiting and talking to parents and those things. But there were personal things with. In fact, my dad knew Coach Bryant was sick well before I did, and I was working for him.
Wow.
And he had a good relationship with both Coach Bryant and Mrs. Bryant as well.
That's great.
So, being a preacher's son and knowing what that's like, being a preacher's daughter, you're a leader whether you want to be or not. You're the example whether you want to be or not. Now you're a football player, and on campus, that's a different kind of a status that people have a lot of assumptions about football players. How did you pair that together?
Well, again, it again goes back to where you were, the way I was raised, and you, with you, knowing what it's like being a preacher's kid. You've somewhat have been in the spotlight, or knowing that everything that you do or
Yes.
say is being watched. It's going to get back home sooner or later.
Right.
And so I lived that way all my life, and having the added pressure knowing that whatever you do is going to get back to Coach Brown eventually too. So
Right.
And you didn't want that to
that sort
happen.
of, you did not want that to happen. So that kept things in check. So usually anything that we were involved in, we tried to do, keep it on the down low.
Absolutely.
Most definitely.
I always said that at that time, the three most powerful men in the state of Alabama was the Governor Wallace, Bear Bryant, and Suge
Jordan, yes.
They ran the state pretty much.
Yes.
And not necessarily in that order.
In that order.
Right.
That's
Right.
There are a couple of things. I remember when James got his draft induction thing. You remember when they went to the lottery system and you had a number?
Yeah.
My
We
number
sat around
was
and
like
watched. Yeah, we listened to the radio. We listened to that was our freshman year, Sly, I think.
Yes.
We had a bunch of us sitting around listening to the radio to see if your birthday was going to be in the top
That's right.
50 or so.
Mine was like 219, so I knew I wasn't going anywhere. James' number was 1.
Oh, no.
Oh, my goodness.
And he said, well, what am I going to do? I said, well, go over there and talk to Coach Jordan. So he went over there and he talked to Coach Jordan. That's the last time we saw it. It went away. It disappeared. So he didn't have to go anywhere.
Those things could vanish real quickly if they wanted them to.
They could. You guys talked about the coin flip and how Rick had the big grin on his face and stuff. You guys knew Alan Pizzatola, right? Alan passed, I think, not too long ago. But Alan and I went to high school together.
John Carroll.
Yeah. And you talked about teams not being very good. We were horrible. And but I remember we were playing you guys, and we were out there on the field, and I had the big grin on my face when I saw Alan. It was like, oh man, I know this guy. We went to school together, and man, he was all fired up and carrying on, and just he wasn't into being friendly. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, okay. This is different.
This is serious here, huh?
Yeah, he was. He tried to run up and hit me. And I was like, oh, okay. But anyway, so let's see. Who's got another question here?
Sly, talk a little bit about the Mississippi State situation.
Yes.
Just being the first black head coach. Because I know Larry Templeton was the athletic director at Mississippi State, and he offered you the job on several occasions, and you kept turning him down. And Larry said, I'm not going to take no for an answer that easily. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I was with the Green Bay Packers at that time, and I think I'd gone. I was previously, prior to going to Green Bay, I was the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions, and then I went to Green Bay as a running back coach, and I was very happy in Green Bay. Believe it or not, I never thought I would live in cold weather and enjoy it, but that was the best organization other than the University of Alabama that I'd ever worked for. And every organization in pro football is not good.
That's
but
true.
the Packers was and still a great organization. I mean, everything they did from top to bottom was first class. Everything they did was about winning, was geared toward winning the Super Bowl. So I really, really enjoyed being there, and I really did. I thought we would win a Super Bowl there, and I didn't want to leave. But when the opportunity came to go to Mississippi State, I did some research on it, and they were bad at that time.
They
The
were.
program was bad. I knew they were going on probation, and I didn't want to be involved in it. Hey, it's Mississippi. I
Yes.
didn't want to be involved in any of that. And at the same time, I did want to be. I wanted to be a head coach because I was going to turn 50 at that time. I wanted to be a head coach, and I wanted to be a head coach in a program. I wanted to coach in the SEC. I really did. Um, um, and to this opportunity to go to Mississippi State came after I had didn't get the job at the University of Alabama. So first of all, I'm shocked that they even came back, because after I didn't get the job at Alabama, I didn't think anybody would offer me a head coaching job, because when you don't get the job at your alma mater, that's hey, it hurt me. It really did. I won't deny that, because I thought I had it. I was told that I had it, and then I didn't get it. So I'm thinking, well, hey, if my alma mater doesn't take me, in my hometown, they don't hire me, then nobody else is going to. So I pretty much thought that my chance to be a head coach had bypassed me. But again, like I said, when I didn't want the job at Mississippi State, but and a lot of that went back to uh, I listened to Coach Brown on just about everything, and even though he was passed, he was still in my head. He told Steve Sloan not to go to Ole Miss when Steve Sloan went to Ole Miss, and that didn't work out. And I can remember Coach Bryant saying, "It's you're never going to win a championship at either one of those Mississippi schools." That's what he said, and that was always in my head. And I didn't want to go anywhere after playing on my high school team. I didn't want to go anywhere where I was going to lose again. I didn't want to be any part of that. But as time went on and we went through the process, I turned the job down. I told Larry Templeton I did the interview, because Rick, my attorney, he was my attorney at that time, told me I needed to go ahead and do the interview. Hey, I believe it or not, I did the interview. They flew up to Green Bay, and we did the interview in Appleton, Wisconsin, which is about 20, 30 minutes south of Green Bay. I didn't even want them coming to Green Bay because I didn't want anybody to follow a plane and know I was interviewing for the job. So I met him in Appleton. We did the interview, and I'll never forget when the interview was over with. I walked to my car, and I thought, "Thank God that's over with. I'm going back to Green Bay now, and let's go win the Super Bowl, because this is over." And that was on. They came up, and I think on a Friday night, because we were playing on Sunday. They came Friday. I called them Sunday after the game and told them, "I'm not interested in the job. It's over. I'm done." They called back on Tuesday and said, "Our president wants to talk with you again. He really wants to hire you. We want to." I said, "I'm not interested." He said, "Can we come back up and talk?" So they came back up the next week, and we talked again. And from that interview is the second interview is when they talked me into taking the job. And I'm glad they did, but it was a unique experience, to say the least. But again, like I said,
So you
it
blame
was
Rick.
not something that I was really going after. Yeah, I blame him.
Yeah. Larry Templeton, the athletic director, he would call me after the first interview when they went up to talk. He and the university president flew up to interview Sylvester. And Larry was going to offer. Larry had done his homework, because when Sly didn't get the job in Tuscaloosa, that was in late May or June of that year.
Yes. Yes.
And so, Sylvester, that fall, Jackie Sherrill announced at the end of September, early October, they were going on. He was the head coach in Mississippi State. They were going on probation for buying players before it was legal to buy players. like it is now. So so I didn't know Larry Templeton, so I called the guy that Sylvester had gone to high school with, who worked in the SEC office. I called him and I said, "Hey, can you give me get in touch with Larry Templeton and just tell him I want to talk to him?" Because I had talked to Sly and just said, "Hey, are you interested in Mississippi State?" And Sly said, "Nah, not really." I said, "Do you want to at least talk to him?" I said, "Just at least talk to him and just see." And so anyway, I ended up talking to Larry Templeton, and Larry said, "I've done my homework. He's the guy that I want to hire." That was the very first telephone conversation I had with Larry Templeton.
Wow.
He had done his homework and he knew what Sylvester stood for, the way that he did things, and so when they come up to meet with him the first time, and I get a call from Larry that next morning, like 1 o'clock in the morning. They're flying back down to Mississippi, and he goes, "Well, he turned me down, but I'm not going to take no for an answer." So he just kept after it, kept after it, kept after it. So I tell about the guy at Indianapolis, your buddy that was an assistant coach at Indianapolis.
Yeah, that's what again, like I said earlier, two things that got me. And the reason, well, I say two, that was a couple. It was definitely was divine intervention. There's no question in my mind about that. I look back on it now because from a logical standpoint, from a mental standpoint, to me, it was a bad job. And in my first reaction, I would rather stay at Green Bay and be an assistant than take a bad job. But a couple of things happened. First of all, as we were going through the process, my wife never told me not to go. And my wife, Jerry, I lean on her for a lot of things. She literally did not want, she did not want me to go to Alabama. That was amazing. When Mal Moore had told me previously that he was going to recommend me the job to Alabama, my wife wanted no part. Since she's from Tuscaloosa too, she wanted no parts of going back to Alabama, none. And she said, "You can go, and I'll go." He said, "But I don't like it." Okay. And I tried to get her to knock Mississippi to say that about Mississippi State, and she never would. And that's when I first started thinking something's not right about this one. And then my daughter kept pushing me, and my daughter kept pushing me. She said, "You're 50 years old. Are you going to be happy at the end of your career with never having been a head coach?" And so that one got me. But the one that really put me over is I had a good friend who's passed away now that I worked with at the Indianapolis Colts. I only worked with him 1 year, and we were a bad team, but he was a wide receiver coach, a guy named Milt Jackson. He had coached the 49ers when Bill Washington, I think, won the first Super Bowl. Milt taught me a lot about the passing game because he was a wide receiver coach. He and I roomed together in training camp. So we would sit there and talk about life, and he's the first one that really explained the passing game to me. But I called Milt and I told him, I said, "Milt, I said, I have they've offered me the Mississippi State job." He said, "Wow, Sly, great." I said, "Milt, I'm not taking that job." I said, "It's a bad job." And he didn't say anything. There was a dead silence on the phone. And he said, "Sly," he said, "you got to take the job." I said, "Milt, I'm a grown man. I ain't got to do nothing." And he said, "You got to understand." He said, "If you don't take this job, it's going to be 30 or 40 years before another black man gets a chance at that job." So now it all clicks back in, that training that we got, being a preacher's kid, growing up during the civil rights movement.
Do it.
And this is what Milt said. He said, "For whatever reason, you've been chosen." And that's when things started to change. I knew it in the back of my mind that God was working in this deal, but I didn't want to. I wasn't having none of it. I wasn't taking the job. But when he said that, I knew I had to start to reconsider. And then when we got to the interview, and the second interview, they came to Green Bay, and Dr. Lee. And Dr. Lee is really the one that finally turned it over. Larry was committed to doing it, but Dr. Lee was the president, and he called me about a couple of weeks back, and we talked about it again. and I expressed how much I appreciated him. He finally asked. We talked about a lot of things. I told him again, as being the first black coach, I wasn't sure they were going to let me run things. And I made it clear, I'm not going to be the token black coach. I'm not going to be the guy that you put out there and you telling me what to do. I said, I'm going to do all hiring or firing. I decide who play. I decide who coaches for me. And the first time you ever say anything to me about who I play or who I hire, I'm out. And but and even then, I wouldn't take it. But Dr. Lee asked then, she said, he got to talking and he said, my dad had passed in 2000. He said, if your dad was here, what would he think? What would he say? And that's when he got me. Because I knew what Dad was going to say.
Yeah.
He was going to say, hey, all these other people have marched, have had dogs sicked on them, have had hoses put on them, so you could have this opportunity.
Yes.
He would have said exactly what Milt said.
Yep.
Hey, for whatever reason, you've been chosen. You got to go do this. Because this has got to open the doors for somebody else. For me personally, that's why I took the job. I wanted to be a head coach to coach football, but I wanted to be somewhere where I could win the national championship. That was the bottom line for me. And if I couldn't do that, I wanted no parts of it. But it was a call of duty, and even the way things turned out, I thank God He gave me the strength to go ahead and do it.
What's your relationship with Mississippi State now? Do you have a relationship with Mississippi State?
With my players, the president, when I got inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame, the president sent me a plaque, and I got a good relationship with the president over there. Has been real good to me. I've only been back one time. I went back. I haven't been to a game, but I went up to the office a few years back and saw some of my old players, and I stay in touch with them. In fact, I still got my phone number is still the same one I had when I was at Mississippi State. So if they ever needed me, they could call me.
Yeah,
And
nice.
One of these days I'm gonna get back up to a game.
And you talked to Larry.
They invited me, but I've got a great relationship with Larry Templeton.
Yeah.
Larry Templeton, Dr. Lee, and the people there were always good to me. And I've still I got a great deal of respect because I was treated well while I was there. The fans were good to me. The university was good to me, and I'm very thankful that I had that opportunity because again, nobody else gave me that opportunity. So I always appreciate the people at Mississippi State for giving me that opportunity and for supporting me while I was there.
Chris Good says, "Good morning, Coach Croom. Love you, my friend. We spent years together at Alabama and the Colts." So your friend Chris Good's on here with us this morning.
Chris was a good man. I was with him that one year at the Colts up there. It was that was great.
He can hear you. So, and I'll tell you this: across the street from me, there's a Mississippi State family, and you know how I know it's a Mississippi State family? They got about 4 maroon trucks with Mississippi State tags on the front of them.
I'm surprised, and they probably got this big bulldog sitting out in the front yard too. Wouldn't surprise me at all.
Hey, they're Mississippi State through and through. And,
no, the Mississippi State people they are very close. It's a lot like the Auburn people, Thom. Auburn always talk about the Auburn family. Well, I tell you what, the Mississippi State people, that is family. They take care of each other. They really do now.
Good.
And if you graduate from Mississippi State, especially if you got an engineering degree, you ain't never gonna have to not look for a job. I promise you that.
Right.
Rick.
Yes,
Rick, you did the you talk a little bit about the 16th Street Baptist Church thing where you brought together many of us who had been first at Alabama and at Auburn, and we had a great conversation. Can you all talk about that for a minute?
Yeah. What kind of triggered the whole thing was my wife and I had been to see the movie 42, the Jackie Robinson story. It was probably in April, early May, something like that. So we came out and we were talking, walking to the car, and I said, you know what I'd like to do? I'd like to get the first Black scholarship football players at Alabama and Auburn together and do like a panel discussion of how that impacted their lives. And so she just kind of challenged me to do it. Well, I started calling around trying to find a place. Well, first thing I did is I called Sylvester. I called Sly. He was with the Titans then. And I said, when could you do this? Because, you know, as an assistant coach in the NFL, they've got certain dates where you're locked down and you can't get away from it. So Sly had one weekend in late June or early July where he could do it. And so that was the date that we used. And so started calling around trying to find a place and couldn't find a place. I called the Alabama Theater. I called the Civic Center. I called all these places and everything was already booked. And so I had a guy at work came up to me and said, why don't you call the 16th Street Baptist Church and see if they'll let you. And the city of Birmingham was doing it was a celebration of the anniversary of the Civil Rights Movement. And so there were city functions. So the city was endorsing certain things. And so we had talked to the city about it and they were all in favor of it. And so I called the 16th Street Baptist Church and the assistant to the pastor there just said, let me go. I told her what I wanted to do and when we wanted to do it. And she said, let me run and talk to the pastor. So she came back and said, the pastor would like to sit down with you and talk with you. And I'm sure he wanted to make sure that I was legit. And this was so I went down to the church and sat and talked with him probably for about 45 minutes, just telling him what we wanted to do and why we wanted to do it. And so he just said, well, at the end of our discussion, he goes, sure. He said, I think this is something we want to be involved in. So you guys can use our sanctuary for it. Well, then it was like, okay, I need to find somebody to be the moderator. So Feinbaum was just leaving Birmingham then, going, national. So I called Paul and had a good relationship with him. And a lot of people said, why are you want to get Feinbaum to do it? He's crazy, but that's not really his personality. His personality is he's shy. I mean, he's almost an introvert as opposed to what he is on the radio. So I called him and Sylvester, I think he has you on his show at least once a year now based on their, but Feinbaum did a great job. And it was just, Thom, you were there, Sylvester was there, Coach Oliver and Jack Rutledge were coaches. Coach Oliver had been at Auburn and Alabama. So James Owens, who's passed away. And it was just turned out to be I went down, the guy here in Birmingham, Steve Skipper's an artist here in Birmingham, and Alabama, the university, the Bryant Museum, commissioned him to do a painting of Wilbur and John, kind of commemorating the integration of the Alabama football program. Well, I know Steve pretty well, Steve Skipper pretty well, and so Steve and I were talking, and so we did a coffee table book with statements from former players, coaches, and it just came out it's not in many of the bookstores and stuff like that. But we did this book, and it's got statements from former players and coaches and administrators and several people involved in the civil rights movement, just talking about the impact that the integration of the Alabama football program had on them and their lives. So anyway, that was that event, and we did this thing with the coffee table book, kind of based off of that. That's what kind of and I thought it was we didn't have a whole lot of people sitting in the church, but it was a great event, and they still have the film of it down at the city. I was talking to some people the other day when we went down there, and Steve Skipper, the city council is behind the book, and they're going to try to get the book into the local schools and stuff, because it's about the history of the state of Alabama. I mean, integration of the program in Tuscaloosa. So anyway, that was good. We enjoyed that. That was a great event, and I still have people who come up and tell me that they were there, but I think they all couldn't have been there because there weren't that many people there that night. So anyway,
I tell you though, the two coaches were the funniest, man. We were downstairs waiting, and so everybody started telling stories. And the two coaches had the best stories. Boy, I'll tell you, I can't even repeat those stories here. I have to tell you guys.
That's what I was going to say. Between Jack and Brother Oliver, no, we can't talk about that.
Well,
that's another conversation for another time.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, they were great.
I'll promise you, we have to make sure all mics are turned off.
That's right. No, that's right.
Oh man, I think we lost Barbara Wallace, so I think we've kind of run over time. Anybody got anything else you want to hit up before we go?
Well, I do have a question for
Okay.
Coach Croom, and also for Rick too. There have been in the NFL, there have been over 500 coaches during the length of the time of the NFL, but so very few coaches of color.
Mm-hmm.
And this has been a conversation that has been endless. And I think a decade ago, if I remember correctly, the NFL said, we're gonna set a program up where we're gonna really begin to feed in more coaches. But here we are in 2023, and we have fewer African-American coaches of colors than we've ever had before in the NFL. What, with this huge fan following, what can the fans do to encourage the powers that be that we need to use some of these wonderful players who have coaching ability to move forward into becoming coaches? What do we need to do? There's a scarcity. It's obvious. Every single year, it's obvious.
Well, I tell you, it's Barbara. It is very disappointing. And a lot of us behind the scenes talk about it. I was talking with James Harris. I've talked with who was the first black quarterback to win a Super Bowl. Doug Williams, and I talked with James Harris, who was at Buffalo, and James paved the way for guys like Doug to play in the league, and we're all discouraged by it. To be very honest with you, and I don't know what the answer is, and I think one thing that has to happen. I think part of it. I don't think there's any one solution, but I think part of it is there has to be a louder voice from the elite black players, all players, but especially the elite black players. And I think particularly the quarterbacks in the league, they have to address it. And until they complain loudly, the top players will be listened to. And when they express their lack of their dissatisfaction with the situation, I think people will start to listen more. This is very important because I think sports historically, as we see, a lot of the movements in diversity have started in athletics and entertainment, and it's important that we continue to push this in those two fields because the rest of society seems to follow when we make advances in those areas. That's the primary reason I think that we have to do this. Just as integration of the football team, the University of Alabama and Auburn and the other schools in Southeastern Conference had such a positive effect on the rest of society, doing so in the leadership capacities of the NFL will also help in the leadership capacities of other organizations as well. Right now, I'm sad to say, I think the bottom line is that some of these billionaire owners find it very difficult to sit down across the desk from a black man or a minority coach or a woman and talk about making a decision and have that person of color have the power to say yes or no. They have a difficulty with that.
Yes.
And it's not only on the football field, it's in the boardroom and elsewhere.
Absolutely.
Right.
There's a difficulty in having a minority person being the face of that kind of organization. And not so much, I think, from the public standpoint. I just think it's that power and wealth dynamic
Yes.
that we have not yet been able to change. The Rooney Rule, men like Art Rooney, Bill Walsh, they were men of a different character. They weren't like that. They wanted to move forward, and they really did look at people on an individual basis and on the basis of their talent and their character. Well, that's not the case so many times, and that's part of it as well. I think back now to, I mean, people, even in college football, and I know I'm bouncing around a little bit, but
yes.
but you have to think in the civil rights movement, this thing is. People say, well, you know, hey, well, black people, you got to do it. Well, yeah, we do have to do it. I would love to see a black owner in the NFL, but until some of those guys die, those guys not going to sell those football teams. I mean, because they're making too much money.
That's right.
And so I think that would help. So the opportunity for a black owner is, I think that's still yet far. Even though somebody may have the money, the opportunity is not going to come anytime soon. I don't think. But it has to happen. Some of these people with just have to be motivated. We have to keep talking about it. We can't ever stop talking about it.
Right.
We can't ever let it go away, because it's going to take a change of heart by some of the people, by some of the current owners, in order for this to move forward.
Yes.
And for people to take leadership again, but I think the players first. I've always believed that when the players, the guys who are making the big money, the quarterbacks, when they complain about it, and it doesn't make any sense when you look at the best guys. I mean, Mike Tomlin is one of the best in the league.
Yes,
and Pittsburgh, and Art Rooney, the guy who came up with the rule, they've shown this guy has never had a losing season.
Right.
And so why would you not give guys an opportunity? And instead of just continuing to recycle the same old guys, hey, give some other guys an opportunity to coach. And it's still a problem. We have to keep talking about it. There's no one solution. We any ideas? I think we got to use them all.
Right.
I agree.
There's it has to there has to be a change of heart with some people, and then for some people, if we can't change their heart, then we got to change the people.
Right.
Yeah. I think the ownership is ownership in the NFL or the NBA and all that, but and then in college, athletic directors. You know, there aren't many black athletic directors.
Right.
Yes.
And then just like in the owners of the NFL teams, I think those guys, a lot of them are old school people who are doing things the way they did them 50 years ago. And except for the Rooneys, the Rooney family and the with Tomlin at Pittsburgh. So but I just think Sylvester could have gotten the job at Alabama, should have gotten the job at Alabama, but for him to have taken the job at Mississippi State, we thought that was going to really be a significant move to open the door for others. But it really hadn't opened very many doors. Sly, it just
not yet.
Here's something that I have to point out, and it's when we look back, I think 50 years ago, and think about us being the first, and yet people like Coach Bryant, I think about guys like Pat Dye. I remember when Pat Dye hired James Daniels and guys at Auburn. Joe Whitt at Auburn,
Mhm.
when he hired those guys. I mean, in some ways, we've gone backwards instead of going forward.
Right. Right.
Because but people look back. Well, why didn't Coach Bryant do this back early? Why didn't Coach Bryant do this then? I mean, things were totally different. The laws were totally different then, and
Yes.
yet
Right.
Yes.
Coach Bryant gave Wilbur a chance. Coach Bryant hired John Mitchell. I mean, I was shocked. Coach Bryant hired John Mitchell right out of college to be the first black coach at Alabama.
Am I
Yeah.
right?
I mean, I was shocked when he did that. When he hired me, I was a graduate assistant, and I mean, Coach Bryant came to me and asked me to. He said, if you don't make it in pro football, we want you to come back and go to grad school, and
Wow.
and be a graduate assistant for him. When I was getting ready, I was going to take a high school job in LaGrange, Georgia. And I walk up to the office one day, and he's hired me as a linebacker coach. I never even played linebacker, and my first job is I'm coaching linebackers. So the thing I'm saying is that he planned everything, which he never
Yes.
did anything by accident. He
Right.
was
Right.
making changes, and he was moving forward. And what I often think about some of these coaches that now, when 60%, 70% of your football team is of minorities, and then 60, 70% of the assistant coaches in the Southeastern Conference and in college football are minorities.
Mm-hmm.
And you gonna tell me these men are not capable of being offensive and defensive coordinators,
Right.
Right.
which you
Right.
have to hire them as coordinators in order to have a chance to get to
The
be
head coach.
a head coach.
Yeah.
The athletic director can't hire a non-coordinator now these days. I don't agree with that. I don't think you have to be a coordinator
Right.
to be a head coach, but it's just tough for the AD to make that hire. The media is going to crucify him if he doesn't have a coordinator these days.
Right.
But coaches have to. Our head coaches have to do a better job, to me, of identifying people who are capable and giving them an opportunity and developing. I think they have a responsibility to say, guy might say, well, they're not any guys or well, it's part of your responsibility to develop
Do
them.
that.
You're
That's
Yes.
right.
making
That's right.
you're
That's
making
Yes.
right.
12, $15 million off of these guys.
Right.
Some of your people who want to go into coaching. Hey, you should identify and develop
Yes.
guys to be coordinators and also to be head coaches,
Yeah.
because hey,
Absolutely.
that's how you making your living, and that's how you putting the money in the bank. And they owe that
Right.
to
You guys talking
the
about
black
Coach
community, I think.
Right.
I
Coach
agree.
Tomlin. You talked about Coach Tomlin earlier. Coach
Mhm.
Tomlin was given the opportunity to coach a good team in a
Yes.
good organization.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
If you're given
Yes.
if you're given a sorry team, man,
You
shit,
can't
ain't nothing
do.
you can do. Nobody
Right.
else has won with this team, and
Right.
now they give it to you.
Right.
Give it to you.
And
Right.
expect you to make miracles, work miracles out of it. Yeah.
And that's
Hey,
across the
hey,
board. Even when you
Yes.
look at this, the mayor of cities, they turn it
Right.
over to the black mayor after the city has gone to pot.
Yeah.
All the businesses have left. Everybody who's paying taxes for their property, they're gone. Now you have it. What can
Right.
you do? So yeah, you're
I
absolutely
think
right. Have a good
you know,
organization.
Yeah.
and I was back near the end of the NFL season. Man, they were just wearing Dak Prescott out. No
Yes.
matter what he did, it was wrong. And if he threw an interception, it was the end of the world. And I was sitting and I was trying to figure out, well, why are they so down on Dak? But Dak is the face of the most valuable franchise in the NFL.
Yes.
yes,
And
he is.
that's still an issue for some people.
Oh,
You
yes.
know,
Yes,
um,
yes.
he's it. When you talk Dallas Cowboys, it's Dak Prescott.
It's Dak.
Right.
And
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
okay,
he's the
well
quarterback.
we'll get him out of there.
They do everything they can to
Anyway,
downplay him. Yes.
What
yeah,
can you
this is
say?
great. So we got time maybe for one more question, comment, and we've already run over, but that's okay. It's a good discussion.
We are. It's great discussion.
Coach, you got anything else you want to say before we leave? I appreciate you coming back.
I've enjoyed it. Again, I'm still not gonna forget about my sound going out. That was a bad feeling. But I tell you what, I'm glad you gave me a chance to come back, and I've enjoyed this discussion. And here's the thing that again I want to say, and to particularly to any minority young people that are listening to this, it is, I was the first Black coach in the SEC. I have mixed emotions about that because there's an insinuation that I was the first one qualified. That is not the case.
Right.
And I always want to say that there's a lot of people who should have had that opportunity that didn't get it, who were qualified, a lot more qualified than myself. And I hope that, and I will admit that it discourages me when I see the current situation. And at one time, I had even told, I said, I'm just done with it. I'm out of it. But that's not what our ancestors did. That's not what people, and not just Black people, but I'm often reminded of the Freedom Summer when a lot of white college students came to Mississippi to be involved in the civil rights movement. I'm often reminded of Viola Liuzzo, a white woman from up north who was killed and gave her life to advance the movement.
Yes.
It takes us all to make these great changes.
It does.
Right.
It's not just it's going to, for us to make the society better, it's going to take Black people and white people who have a heart of love for one another to make these changes.
Yes.
And it's discouraging sometimes, but we can't quit. We have to continue to programs like this. We got to keep talking about it because we're not going to make these changes unless we change people's hearts.
Absolutely. That's where it
It's
starts.
not going to change. And that's why we got to keep talking about it, because a change of heart will get some real changes done. So I'm glad to have been a part of this program. And we have to keep talking to our young people and raise new leaders, because we can talk about it. We can't do what we used to do, but we can keep motivating them to follow and still make sacrifices for the next generation. They have to do that.
Absolutely.
Make sacrifices for the next group.
Right.
I think we have to understand too that the young people are different. They have come up under a different system and so on and so forth. But that's who we have to work with.
Yes.
Right.
And let's don't complain about them. Let's if we have a lesson that they can learn, then let's put forth that lesson.
Right.
But
there are a lot of young people who got the right mind and the right heart to be leadership, and we got to be leaders and provide that leadership that we need, because there are a lot of our young people. I always say that 20% of people lead, 80% follow.
That's right.
Out of that 20, you got 10 leading the right way, 10 leading the wrong way. So that 10% that's going to lead the right way, we got to encourage and motivate and keep fighting.
Absolutely.
This has been wonderful. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Coach. Thanks you, Rick.
Thank y'all for having me.
Barbara. It's been great.
A pleasure.
Yes.
It's been a wonderful, and people have really have enjoyed it in the chat. Don't throw the babies out with the bathwater, Angela Gibbs says. Anthony Tedeschi. Anthony is from Delaware, somewhere northeast, and he says, "Thank you, Coach, for all you've done. May God continue to bless you."
Thank you.
Hopefully, it was a good discussion, and maybe we touched some hearts. Who knows?
Yes.
So, but it was great. Thank you guys. Thank you, Rick. Rick, I appreciate you inviting me to that 16th Street thing. I'll never forget it. I thought
You're
it was
welcome.
awesome. It was one of those things where, you know, we did this and we were the first, and so now they've forgotten about us. But that came. You resurrected that, Rick. We appreciate that, man.
I'm going to get a copy. When I was at City Hall a couple of weeks ago, one of the council people's assistant introduced me to the guy that was kind of running. He's got all the films and tapes and stuff like that, and so he was going to look back to see if he still had, because the city filmed the event that night.
Okay.
So I'm going to try to get that and distribute it around to the schools where they can maybe play it in the school system, so that, because it just a lot of things can be learned from just I think things that were said that night. And,
right.
So I'll keep you posted on that. I'll send you guys a copy of that as soon as I get it.
All right, guys.
Awesome.
Thank you.
I'll always remember the fact that when you guys went out for the coin toss, you were grinning, Rick. And Sylvester had his game. He had his game face on.
I had that game face on, boy, and he caught me off guard.
I didn't know what to do.
Awesome. There you go. Yeah.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank y'all.
It's been
I enjoyed it.
Thank y'all.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks.
Okay. Over, but that's going to be our show for today. We want to thank everybody. Thank the two Barbaras.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. It was an
Wonderful.
honor.
We'll have you again for sure. Thank Sylvester Croom, Coach Croom. Thank Barbara Larkin. Thank Rick Davis, Barbara Wallace Edwards. And that's it. It's March 14th in the year 2023. Remember to enjoy yourself. Make every day count. Stay safe. Peace.